Hey, Shanice, do you think we can get started?
I think we can. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Today we'll get a chance to learn a bit about Sagely. But before doing that, I'll tell you guys a little bit more about our partnership with Sagely and introduction to my team, as well as the Sagely platform. And then we'll get the chance to learn about the Sages. So Sagely is a platform that offers business assistance to startups and small business owners. And get to hear from Peggy, Christina, and Scott about the types of services they provide. And as a reminder, I would like for everyone to use the Q&A feature to submit their questions. Time permitting, our sages will get a chance to answer your questions. And if not, there should be time at the end of our webinar to do so. So I am Shanice Wallace. I am a business strategy manager for the Mayor's Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion. In my role, am supporting and engaging different industries in Boston, and one of the industries of focus are startups. In my role, I've had the chance to start a startup series. As of January, we had monthly webinars or engagements where people can learn about different aspects of the startup industry, and partnering with Sagely has allowed us to kind of explore what it means to provide technical assistance to startups. So as our office, we are really excited about showcasing our Sagely's work today, and really hope that if you are interested in using Sagely's platform, that you follow the instructions on the last slide where you can get in touch with me and Michelle about how you can use their services. And with that being said, I'll pass it off to Michelle, who will tell you more about Sagely.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Michelle Wang, the founder of Sagely. We're here today thanks to a fantastic partnership with the City of Boston's Economic Opportunity and Inclusion team, a collaboration that truly resonates with our mission at Sagely, which is to make expert business advice available and accessible to entrepreneurs. At Sagely, we understand that launching and leading a startup is no small feat. It involves a myriad of challenges, from shaping a robust business strategy and model to defining a market-worthy product and building a brand that stands out. Recognizing these hurdles, Sagely provides tailored advisory support, helping founders navigate through these early critical stages. We connect you with seasoned experts in various fields. So whether that's finance, marketing, product, development, branding, and more, all aimed at getting you from problem to solution fast so that you can get back to growing your business. So let's get started and dive into our first segment. First up, we have Peggy Gilmer, who is so much more than a leadership coach with an impressive background and client list. She's here to help us master the founder mindset. So Peggy, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you. The last 6 years have brought me an opportunity of working with over 300 startups. And I come away from every engagement just so impressed with the intelligence, the drive, the passion, the vision, the energy that you all bring to these new endeavors. I truly see you as saving our world. And there ends up being also a common denominator of challenges when people come to me, because you're standing in a situation where there's more that you don't know than you do know, and that the world, and your world especially, is going faster than anyone could possibly be competent in. And you're dealing with a myriad of different kinds of people with different kinds of needs and expectations. And it is a whitewater ride. And the challenges boil down to two. In all that complexity, it really boils down to two main ones that I want to talk about today. How do you stand in it? And two, how do you make good decisions in it? So today I want to talk about resilience and discernment. Next. Okay. The life of a founder is like living in whitewater, because everything is changing. Your company is changing, your product is changing, the market is changing, competition, government, technology, Money availability is always changing and always seems like adding new. And so your capacity to stand in that white water and deal with both your own and others' reactions to that, insecurity, ignorance, stress, surprise, change, even success, how you deal with conflict, how you deal with rejection, difficult relationships, criticism, how easily and quickly you can powerfully and presently stand in those moments and deal with those issues will either accelerate or inhibit your momentum towards your goals. And it's a critical determinant in success. So I have a couple of primary tips for you in how to actually stand in white water and succeed. Next, please. The first one comes from the Greeks, know thyself. It's very important that you know who you are. This is a picture of an instrument that I use because it gives us so much insight into people. But you need to know what you love to do. You need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. You need to know what kind of environment in which you can thrive and how you're likely to respond under stress. And based on those things, you want to take on those aspects of business that you can best do, and you want to share those that you can't. So knowing yourself and knowing your teammates is absolutely essential. I love this instrument, but there's many out there. But it's extremely important that you have good self-awareness, not only for how you work today, but how you grow the company and what you tend to delegate away, what you keep, what kind of people you bring in, and what kind of culture you will build. So knowing thyself is the very first thing you want to be very good at. Next slide. The second one is everybody talks about managing your time. I'm much more a fan of managing your energy. There's never enough time, and so we want to maximize our capacity to get things done. And I started developing this model about 20 years ago. And to me, it is the essence of how we can stay highly productive and highly enthusiastic. Human beings exist on a continuum in a feeling state from shame to love and appreciation. Or if you look through your thoughts, if you're more of a heady kind of person, what your thoughts are saying to you about I am bad or I love. But let's just hang out on the feeling side. People live anywhere on this continuum. And when we live downscale, when we are downscale, if we're feeling guilty, if we're anxious, if we're judgmental, if we're angry, then that is a much lower energy. And we tend to see the world through that lens. So any situation we might look out onto the world with is going to be colored by those feelings and that energy state. We also tend to be not as healthy, not as powerful, and not have a sense of ability to get things done. So if we can move and live upscale, it tends to create a broader capacity to work, a more exciting capacity to work. When we are upscale, we are more creative, we are more productive, we are more happy, we imbue our companies and all the relationships that we engender with those qualities. We get more done better when we are upscale. The challenge is that we can't be two places in once. So if you're down there feeling anxious or judgmental or angry, it's very difficult to also feel love and appreciation. So we need to train ourselves to move upscale as quickly as possible and to return to upscale when we fall away from it. And once you get that sense, it really becomes a question of cycle time. I've noticed I've fallen back down the scale. What tool can I invoke? What capacity can I bring in to come back upscale and then go back to work? So many of my clients try to work through the stress, work through the anger, and it's like pushing rocks uphill. If you will take your energy upscale, everything will go a whole lot easier for you. So those are my first two tips for resilience, working on resilience. The second one is, how do we make good decisions in this whitewater world. Next slide, please. And so this is sort of a tier one of the qualities that we need to develop to be an entrepreneur. Discernment to me is the height of our capacities as a business person or an entrepreneur. And what that is the ability to stand in a moment of decision making and see clearly and make a decision for the good of the whole. I actually learned about this training horses, but it actually works very well with people too. If you develop these 4 qualities surrounding the word discernment, you will be able to stand in a moment and make the most powerful, best decisions that there are. So let me just take a moment, because each one of these takes a little bit of time to consider. Open-hearted is what I was just talking about. If you're upscale, if your heart is open, if you're receptive, you will see things more clearly and be able to take others and information in. Being present, being in this moment, grounded in your body, in this moment with the people you're around, is highly, highly necessary. If you're checked out in someplace else, you have partial attention, you're not going to be able to make that quality decision. Connected to others. How well can you read others? How well can you discern where they are, what they need, what's going on in their field, so that you're taking your decisions and encompassing for the whole environment, not just your immediate needs. The last one to me is core, is how do you show up authentically? If you've put a mantle of falsehood on, if you're trying to prove something to people, if you're trying to be something you're not, if you're trying to show up with a should or a could or a would, all of that layers on you and takes away from authenticity, takes away from trust, and makes you process all these circuits of showing up that are not true and genuine and what are needed in the moment. Learning to discern is essentially standing in a moment, embodying those qualities as best you can, and then asking the question, what now? What's the best decision now? Next slide. So I've been kind of high level and abstract to bring it back down to the floor level. These are the kinds of challenges that I find that my clients come to me for in terms of relationship challenges that they deal with every day, for themselves, for how they lead, for how they build powerful teams, and how they build a culture that promotes both productivity and enthusiasm. And this is the basis of my particular practice. So speeding through the last slide, if you will, Michelle, this is my tagline, and I believe it wholeheartedly. I've spent 40 years of my life working on it. Remember that better humans build better businesses. People want to work with you. They work harder. They bring their best to work. And we're all better when we're upscale.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peggy. You know, as a founder, it's always so difficult to remember, take a step back, you know, when you're in the heat of not being so upscale, remembering that you need to get up. That's great feedback. We have some questions. The first one for Peggy, can you share some tips on how founders can stay resilient when things like funding rejections or slow market traction hit?
Yes, yes, also a very common question. Two levels. One is keep a hold of your vision. Keep that North Star alive and vibrant for you. As the waves crash in and the people crash in, is just hold to your North Star and your commitment and your passion around it. The second one is take very good care of yourself. The first thing people tend to give up is taking care of themselves when they step into this role. Nurture yourself, keep your energy high so it doesn't tank on you. And last one would be, remember that you are in a steep learning curve, and you will be as long as you're in an entrepreneur in a growing business. Cut yourself some slack. You know, you're learning. Everything will contribute, and it'll be easier the next time. So those would be my 3 first tips for staying resilient.
And then the second question, how can early stage founders at ground zero effectively inspire teams and grow a culture that's adaptable and innovative?
Well, there's the textbook organization effectiveness answers, which I think are very good and very powerful, like inclusion. Don't be a lone ranger. Bring in your team. Let them participate. Let them join in. Let them learn with you. Participation. Let them know how their work serves your mission. The more they feel a part of what you're doing, the more they will want to contribute. My favorite tip for anyone is to create a culture where people want to come to work and love it, is to build the habit into yourself to look for the good. No matter what's going on, you're sitting around a conference table and somebody shows you 3 slides. I love the font. I love the content. Thank you. Somebody walks in, just build the practice of looking for the good. Our brains are wired to look for what's wrong. People thrive in a culture where there is a felt sense of appreciation and gratitude for what they do. And you can tune within that. But if you just work on what's wrong, it sucks the life out of people. So build it into your brain to look for the good and share the good when you see it constantly.
So thank you, Peggy. On to our next segment with Christina Trampota, a digital and fintech leader with rich background at some of the majors like AT&T, Visa, X, formerly known as Twitter. She'll be guiding us through essential MVP development and early product validation. As a quick reminder, if you have questions, put it in the Q&A function. We allow 5 minutes of Q&A time after each segment, and we'll get to more Q&A at the end, time permitting.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the warm intro, Michelle. So to give a little bit of insight, I'm excited to be here. I bring to you from Innovate, Grow, Scale, where I work as a chief product officer with different clients, accelerating their paths forward. Why does this matter to you? Well, founders, you're out there, you're focused. You're focused on everything from fundraising, working on what do you need to build, trying to pass the product with others, see if this is really going to work in the marketplace. What do you need to develop? As well as all the changes going on in your organization. Whether you're a small organization or you're trying to take your startup product and maybe you're trying to take it out to a multinational group. Well, this might be a change in the markets, all the different settings and styles, and that's where I can help you. I've worked across a diversity of verticals, as mentioned in this, from fintech, telecom, big tech, ad tech, from little bitty startups to these big brands. And I love especially building 0 to 1. And that's why I'm excited to be here today. Next slide. So let's get started. As you'll see here, you have the product and the markets. The magic is when there's always a perfect match between the two. And I hope that the insights and ideas in these upcoming slides are going to be a helpful foundation for your success. Next slide. And what you'll see coming up here is really a theme. They're going to be based on AAA, like the AAA credit rating. So think of this as something to remember what we're going through. These are insights on how you can build a AAA business in terms of product and market fit together. So first of all, what we're kicking this off with is archetypes. This is a topic and a subject matter that matters to everyone, every single step of the journey. This is something you should understand. For those who have seen this, often you might think of this as a customer persona. Who is your target profile? What do they look like? How would you describe them? And often you might be thinking of this as a personal profile. There are people behind every decision that's made, whether your business is actually for a consumer or an enterprise market. Either way, this still matters. You need to focus and figure out which ones are there and where does your business actually align in the market. You want to go in the right direction and understand from them, from what does success mean for them, what markets they fit into, how are they structured, and why everyone in the team should care. And what I'm referring to there is even as a startup, whether your team is one and you're a solopreneur right now, but over time you're going to build out that team, whether they're consultants, interns, or a broader organization you build, everyone needs to be part of this and understand who are we building this towards and where are we trying to take it. Next slide. And with that, this actually ties into the product, of course. Where are you trying to take this? How are you going to develop what matters for this customer profile? First of all, we described the person on the previous slide, the archetype, who is our ideal customer. Well, who are we really building this for? Are we aligned on this? Can we attract their attention and their interest based on different things? Whether we were looking at their budget, maybe it was their priorities or their preferences, maybe it's the organization they're part of, or maybe it's actually a region they're responsible for. Maybe they're part of a broader industry organization or a smaller team, but either way, they have influence. And so when you're trying to position and take your offering out there to the different opportunities out there, you want to understand this not only for the audience. The second area is promotion. Of course, how do you grasp their attention? How are you going to get it? How are you going to keep them paying attention to your business or brand that's out there, what you've just built? And this can vary, of course, from frequency to seasonalities. How does this change? Are you going to align it with something going on, whether it's a big industry decision, a regulatory trend, or maybe something as simple as a holiday season? And last but not least, the decisions. Where are you going to take this? Who makes that decision? What is their budget? And how will you define success? Next slide. And so when you want to look at this, you need to put some numbers to this. Everyone understands that in today's market, we're in a data-driven direction. Data and details really do matter. So not only the understanding of do they like it or not, who are we building this for? What is the setting and the scenario and the style they would actually like? But put some numbers on this. Who really needs this solution? The abbreviation in there is TAM. That stands for total available market. So maybe you're out there. How can you measure this? Find a way to track data and details and put some quantitative information in there. The background you see I placed there is something simple from, say, a tool like Google Analytics or others. We're just looking at website traffic. Who clicked on this? What was the click-through rate? What was the position? All of that. This could be any type of metric you pull this from, but it helps you identify this key information because the analytics, the second A of the three A's, the AAA rating you want to have for your business, is important because you want to understand how are you going to actually not only identify this market and size it, who are your competitors? And yes, you will have some, whether you are an innovator coming up with something brand new or you're a disruptor. There are different players in this market. Disruptor is when there's an established business and they're going in a new direction. And believe it or not, you might not think that they are there, but they come out of the woodwork to say. They might come from a large established organization, multinational corporation, a competitor you never thought was even there. So that's why last but not least on this slide, focus on what makes you unique. UVP stands for unique value proposition. So think about it and identify that. Next slide. And in order to do so, you must take this and understand the market. What are you actually going to do? Understand your industry. Do you know what's going on? What are the dynamics like? Whether you're looking at this like a fruit market, which is the illustration on this side of the slide, you need to understand how it's changing. Everything that is listed there, including as well as many other factors you could look at. As it's mentioning there, what is the market size? Who are your competitors? How is this packaged? How might this evolve? All of these can apply to your business, whether you're looking at something like a consumer product, like food and drinks, or you're looking at this from a commercial standpoint for something in the business to business market. Either way, this information is out there. And it's up to you, the founders, the leaders of these startups, to figure out how are you going to differentiate? How are you coming into the market? Are you disrupting? Are you going to create something that's totally different than everyone else? You still need to look at some existing data that is present, because in order to do so, you have to know where your business, the product, or your startup, how will you actually fit in this overall ecosystem? And the last point on this slide is listing out different sources you can find this. So you see I have listed industry publications, research firms, venture capital banks, just to name a few of the many. There is a lot of information out there for free. I'm just listing a few ideas there where you can find some of this from a statistical manner, provide some data, details, and very recent coverage. Next slide. And how you actually bring this all together? Well, the third A is what we're going into here, advantage. What are you actually going to do, and how are you going to move this forward? Because when you're building your product, you want to understand this as well from the perspective of 3 C's. I use this from classes I've taught over the years, where many of them have been in the subject areas of digital marketing or product management. And this applies to both. If you look at it, you look at the 3 C's: your company, the customer, who are you actually building this for, as well as the 3rd C, your competitor, the competition that's out there. All of these are there, and use this framework to help you identify, first of all, what is your unique advantage? What is the point of differentiation you have? As you see, that is company and customer crossing over. But where you really want to focus, the sweet spot for you as a startup will actually be where you look at the very center for value, because that is where there's probably going to be even more contention, battles, challenges going on, but that is your perfect spot you would love to go for. How are you going to do that? Is it the pricing, packaging? Is it your product? What can you really do? And that brings us to the bottom of the slide, where you see I have highlighted MVP focus. That stands for minimum viable product. Creating the simple, scrappy, basic product, how you can build this 0 to 1. You want to build this with the most lean resources possible, lowest budget, and least amount of time. To make it simple, you're looking at this current. You want to look at this not only for today, but you also want to understand, where is this going? Where do you want to take this going forward in the future? And if for some reason your business has already been out there and you're trying to evolve, consider lost customers. Maybe someone who was with you before, there's a reason they are no longer going to work with you. What was missing? What was that one component? And the next slide, please. And this brings us to product market fit. This is where everyone is really trying to reach from a startup perspective. You're an entrepreneur out there and your dream is to get to this point. Product market fit proves itself because of these 3 points. You turn it into something that's predictable, meaning it's going, it's running. High growth, it's continuing to go up and to the right, as you see this on a graph. You see this moving in the right direction, growing in a positive manner. And last but not least, it's efficient. This can run while you actually go to sleep at night. You want to understand that you have put enough things in place, hired the right staff and team members, and invested appropriately. And how will you know this? Move to the next slide. Is with a closing quote, to understand that no matter what you do, it is ongoing, because excellent firms don't believe in excellence, only constant improvement and constant change. So with that, I just want to encourage everyone to stay scrappy and understand that you want to move this beyond a pitch. You want to make sure you can prove it with a product that enables a real improvement out there, because you want to bring profits and productivity to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Christina. Very insightful. We have a couple of questions. So first one, when you're building your MVP, how do you decide what's a must-have feature versus what's a nice-to-have?
Great point. First of all, I would say the most unique value proposition, when I mention UVP, understand what is that sweet spot. That is going to be your main focus, because that's what's going to help you stand out and differentiate in the marketplace. And the second point I would actually use in that decision would also be cost, both in terms of time and effort, right? And economics. What does it cost and what can you actually build the fastest? Weigh those 2 answers to make your decision for your MVP.
Awesome. Thanks. And the second question, we get a ton of feedback on our product. Should we keep adjusting based on what everyone says, or how do we stay true to our original vision?
That's an excellent one. And I think it applies across businesses, not only in the early stage, but very mature. You want to stay focused, know where you're actually going and who you're building this for. While you want to be agile and flexible and you want to integrate in some changes here and there, you don't want to be a feature factory. And that comes from more of a product perspective looking at this, because you don't want to be developing something and changing it based on every single voice or opinion. Who is your customer and who are you building this for? And one highlight to think of is focus on a maximum of 2 personas when you're looking at who your customers are. As an early stage startup or small business, however you want to identify your organization, build it for only 1 or 2 profiles. And that's it. Focus there, because there's so much other noise and insights, like you just mentioned, that can come in there and really confuse people. And if you do that, it's going to be ongoing and you'll never see probably a finished product or service.
So thank you, Christina. Finally, we have Scott Thornton. a branding legend who has been behind some of the most iconic brand ads of our time. He'll share his insights on crafting a compelling brand identity for startups. Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Thornton, and it's a total pleasure to be with you today. I've got an interesting background, and I was in the corporate side for a while. Then I switched and became one of your types of an entrepreneur. And I started my own business, and I've owned several of them in the past. As Michelle said, I worked for some of the largest ad agencies in the world and did branding all over the world in many different languages and many different companies, and got a really interesting perspective on branding. And as a result of working for those big companies, I was able to work for some of the brightest people with some big budgets, and I fortunately paid attention, and it helped me move into my own company, and that I'm going to be able to share some lessons with you today in short order. At any rate, I want to make sure I commend each of you for being an entrepreneur, because that is really your future is in your own hands. Your own boss, and your success is totally up to you. And whilst it's a 24/7 job, it is the benefits and the joy you get from it is tremendous. And like I said, I've had many companies that some have failed and some have succeeded, and along the way, I would have not changed it for anything. So good for you. Keep going. And as Christina said, stay scrappy. Let's get to branding a little bit if you want to move to the next slide. I want to give you the textbook version of branding first, and then I'll give you some of my insights from real world. So from a textbook standpoint, a brand is sort of the sum of all the expressions that you intend people to recognize that creates a meaning about your brand to their audience. And some of those expressions are, you have a name, you could have a certain way you talk about yourself, you have a tagline, some of the design and elements, and then of course the all-important experiences. In other words, what is the experience people have with your brand? And the meaning is what you uniquely deliver to your audiences, the things that make you special, set you apart. And then the why is the why behind your actions and your products. Now I want to go back to that what. We're going to talk about this a little bit more, but just remember this whole thing about the tangible value that you provide, not what you do. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. If you go to the next slide, please. So a little bit about, from the textbook again, the brand architecture. As you scale, you may end up having more products underneath your brand. The whole idea is to stay at it and keep moving forward and always be reinventing yourself. And this is how some of the three architectures you can use. You could be a branded house like FedEx is the primary brand, and then they have all their brands underneath. You could be an endorser brand like Microsoft. It's Microsoft Windows, Microsoft PowerPoint, and it sort of straddles the middle between branded house and on the right, the house of brands. And Merck, in this case, has all these drugs that they have their own brands that stand on their own. Another good example of that area would be Procter & Gamble. Nobody really knows, they don't really advertise Procter & Gamble, but you certainly know what Tide is and Clorox and things like that. So next slide, please. So what does that mean in the real world? So let's take a look at how people make decisions. And in order to do that, you got to look at the brain, and all decisions stem from the limbic system. So the three parts of the brain, or three major parts of the brain, are the reptilian part, that's the biological part that says you have to pull your hand away if you have it over fire, or you can't kill yourself by holding your breath, those kinds of things. Those are biological. Then you have the limbic system, which is the center of the brain, and that's where all your emotions lie from. Those are the things that drive your decisions, which the decisions are part of the cortex of the brain. So most advertisers think, well, I'm going to talk all about my features and benefits, and the car industry is a perfect example. It's $39.95 and $20 off, and you can go do it today, and low interest rates and things like that. Those are all rational things that everybody has, and you aren't going to separate yourself one bit by talking about that stuff and appealing to the cortex of the brain. The important thing is, as Peggy and Christina have documented already, is try to find that emotional relationship that your product has with the consumers. And back to that notion I described earlier, what you provide, not what you do. So you may provide a cleaning service, but and you could talk about how you have these great products you clean with and things like that. But what you provide is, you know, a sanitary environment, a peaceful coexistence, a better environment for those people around you, those kinds of things. So then the more you find a powerful emotional connection to your brand, the better you'll be. Go to the next slide. So one of the most important things that I have found that has guided me is this notion of the suitor. We did a bunch of research on what is a leading brand in various cultures. And in America, at least, it's the suitor. And I'll just read this because it's self-explanatory. The suitor is exciting, ahead of the curve, and is always unexpected. People want to be around the suitor as they're the center of activity and things happen within their sphere. Americans love and seek the suitor and hold good ones in high regard. So suitor brands are ones that have a real powerful emotional connection. And you probably have friends like this, and you probably know brands like this, that when you're around brands or those people that you view are suitors, they're exciting. It's interesting to be with them. It's always something new, and creativity is abounds, and it's always really interesting, and you feel like you've had a high degree of experience and you've learned more and that you're a better person for being around them. So the suitor is important. And if you can build your brand to be a suitor, that'd be great. Now, the perfect example for this, is you probably expect, is Apple. They are quietly go about, and they don't really brag too much. They don't really pre-launch much of their products, but when their products come to market, they're always like, whoa, this is like, how did they come up with this? It's so exciting. They're ahead of the curve. I really want to hang out with them. I want to be with them. And that is super important for brands, because they're talking about what they provide. And now all of a sudden, Apple can charge 5 times as much as any other phone or computer. They have a built-in market that's anticipating their next product launch. They're just like a powerhouse. So the power of that emotional connection, that limbic part of the brain, the relationship you have, the personal relationship you have with your customers, is super important. So get away from your features and benefits and talk about what you provide, not what you do. Now, you don't want to not talk about your features and benefits. So the important thing is to lead with the emotional part and then hang your features and benefits on that emotional relationship. Next slide, please, Michelle. Thank you. And this is being a suitor is really important as you grow, and over time you want to scale. So your trajectory is a set of I wrote tipping points. The real Harvard study is their talk about the degree of innovation, and this is called strategic inflection points. But tipping points have been some more we can relate to. So say you start off and you move through your growth phase, and then you move into a little other phase, and pretty soon you're going to get to a phase where it's a tipping point where you need to reinvent yourself, because if you don't, some competition will have the advantage of time, and they will start where you are right at that moment, and they'll leapfrog you. And if you don't do that, don't reinvent yourself, you are opening yourself to your decay of your brand. So reinvention never stops, and you always have to be thinking about how I'm going to add another product, add another service, acquire a company, provide some other kind of addition to your brand, so your trajectory continually reinvents itself. So these are things that you can put in practice right after we get off this webinar. You can start thinking about them tomorrow. Next slide, please. So that means that the only thing that is more challenging than starting your company or gaining momentum is sustaining the momentum. And that's important. So don't rest on your laurels. Make sure that you really constantly come to work every day thinking about how I'm going to improve, how I'm going to grow, what's my next play, how am I going to manage my trajectory, so I deal with those inflection points, those tipping points, and move ahead. And one of the most important things I've learned in my time is this third dot point, is be proactive in the delivery of your brand. Don't sit around waiting for people to come. Get out there and start telling people, start developing relationships, find your story, find that key emotional relationship, tie it up with your features and benefits, tell that story, and tell it and tell it and tell it again. And if you're benchmarking, you're not leading. So don't benchmark a company and say, this is how I'm going to be and I'm going to stay that way. You got to get away from benchmarking, and you got to figure out what your relationship with your audience is and move it forward. Next slide, please. So a brand is your promise, and it really is your most valuable asset. And here is the way of how you get people to believe about your brand. And this is an equation called the belief system. And this is true of all people. And they look at your company or your brand or your service or your product, and they say, can this product do what it says it's going to do? And then they also, at the same breath, they say, will that company do what they say they're going to do? And if you can have competence and you can have character, and that you can do and you will do what you say you're going to do, that gives you trust. And trust leads to reputation, and reputation leads to absolutely the ultimate brand factor is loyalty. Apple, as I described, has loyalty because they do this. Home Depot pretty much does this. Starbucks does this. There's a lot of brands out there, and you can do it too. I'll give you a little short story about loyalty. We did another study where, particularly in America, and this is not so true in other cultures, but America, people don't really expect things to work right the first time. But they do expect you to be there for them when it goes wrong. And we've all experienced it, if it's an airline or, something goes wrong. And when you're not taken care of and they don't resolve your problem right away, that results in a complete loss of loyalty. And quite frankly, at this stage of options in your lifestyle, you'll just not go to them. That's why Costco is one of the reasons why they're so good. You can have a product and have it for 5 years, take it back, and they'll return it for you. So that loyalty is super important. Next slide. And this is just a way to go to market, a little chart that you can use. There's 4 phases of how you take your brand from a startup and go to market. First is the introduction phase, then it'll be the infiltration phase, the activation phase, and the follow-up phase. And the introduction is you've got to create awareness. You have to initiate relationships with the audience and verify your credibility and connect to them. You got to find some to bring you into the circle. Then you infiltrate that market, and it's an interconnected web. Everybody involved need to know who you are, what's important, what's your emotional reason, and how your rational elements attach to that. So you got to convert your whole audience. The activation part is you have to drive the action. You have to be proactive in the delivery of your services. You have to go out there and tell people. You have to continually be part of their lives. And then finally, the follow-up. And no one in your circle wants to be left out of the loop. So if you're a brand like Costco or American Express or an airline or a hotel, you'll notice that they're always trying to continue and maintain their relationships with you. So stay connected and nurture those relationships. Next slide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was great. On to our couple of questions. So the first one is, how risky is it to change your brand as you're heading to market? Can you pivot without losing traction? You're on mute.
In the beginning, you can change. You need to pay attention, learn from your market. In the famous words of Sam Walton, just go ask the customer. They have all the answers. And the more you talk to the customer, the more you'll find out what their emotional needs are, what that relationship looks like. And you'll need to adapt and change, but fairly soon you should be able to set on something that says, this is what I provide, this is what I do, and here's the unique space I'm going to occupy. But I think it's important to be able to learn and adapt quickly and change. You won't put yourself in a pickle in the very first stages by changing. So I would encourage you to listen to your consumers and take what they tell you, and more importantly, what they're saying to you, and try to build that into your position.
Awesome, thank you. And the second question is, What are some common branding mistakes startups should avoid?
Oh, the biggest one I can tell you is, and everybody does this, and if you don't do it, you'll be way ahead of the game. Avoid talking about your features and benefits. That's the first thing people do. They're very comfortable with that. They've been developing their products, or services. They have the engineering down. They have everything down. So what they want to do is be able to say, this product, gets 14 revolutions per minute, and it's really advances, and it does that, and people just glaze over. That's not how you approach developing a relationship with people. You need to have that information, but you need to open with this emotional relationship. So the first thing is, try to avoid talking about what your product does, and try to open the discussion with what it provides. What's the emotional benefit that your product gives, and then explain how it does that. So I see that all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, I've also been guilty of doing that.
We all are. I mean, that's our comfort zone, is to be able to just talk about what it is we do. But the important thing is to say, I mean, just take. I mean, I keep going back to Apple, but take a look at them, and they don't talk that it has so many RAM or so much memory or anything like that. They talk about how you can take pictures of your friends and share them with everybody. That's what they provide. So, and every company, whether you're a product, a service, small, large, has that relationship and with the customers, that is beyond facts and figures, beyond features and benefits, and lies squarely in the limbic system, or the heart. So start with the heart, and then go to the mind.
Gotcha. Thank you, Scott. And before we close out and talk about our sponsorship opportunity, we have a couple more questions. So this one is for Peggy. Peggy, what if a leader says they're afraid of the quality of work from the people that they work with? You're on mute.
That is a great question. I get it all the time. I think what I've seen so much is that startups and new leaders forget that they are accountable for the standards of the work their people do. They're accountable for developing their people as well. So if you have somebody that's submitting work that is not to your standards, not to your liking, you need to show them what your standards are, what you expect, and help them get better. So if they turn in shoddy work or work that's incomplete, your first job is to show them what complete and excellent work looks like, and then begin to start holding them accountable for improving the quality of their work over time.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we're almost at time. So Shanice, did you want to take it away?
Yeah, so thank you to the sages today that shared a lot about their expertise with us today. They kind of gave us a bit of a sample of the type of services or expertise or I guess assistance you can receive using Sagely. And then I'll say thank you to all the participants and folks that joined us today. And for you all that are interested in using Sagely, please make sure you email info@mysagely.com. We are partnering with Sagely to sponsor anyone who is interested, and particularly Boston early stage founders who are interested in using this platform. There's also a bunch of other assistance services that Sagely provides. Today, we just gave you a little bit of a sample. So really excited about exploring this type of partnership and providing technical assistance to founders in Boston. So please reach out if you're interested in using this service.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, panelists.